So Sean Hill flew in from Fairbanks today, where he is a visiting professor. He was born and raised in Milledgeville, Georgia, where his first book, Blood Ties and Brown Liquor, kind of grew out of. It's a portrait of the town's Black community through the voices of 6 generations of residents in a variety of poetic forms. It was called a stunning debut. Here's what it looks like. Okay? A reader noted that it speaks to all people in a, quote, soul-important way. I really liked that phrase. Another noted that if you ever get the chance, you shouldn't miss hearing Sean read. And so, here we are. His most recent book, Dangerous Goods, was just released. And he also has that for us, right here. He was a Wallace Stegner Fellow at Stanford, and I just love the poem that he's going to read to you from AQR. Welcome, Sean Hill.
Thank you, Sue, and Gary, and Ron for including me in the pages of AQR. I'm really grateful and happy that I'm here. And I'm really happy to be reading with Eva and Joan. So, a lot of good folk. I'm going to read my poem, Musica Universalis in Fairbanks. Musica Universalis roughly translates, I guess, music of the universe, which is also another way of talking about harmony of the firmament. Musica Universalis in Fairbanks. Each night, this 21st century frontier town settles enough for me to hear the thrum and hiss in my ears, my tinnitus, which I choose to think of as the harmony of my firmament, all so far away, like the shush and hiss from Nana's gas heater that warmed the winter-chilled bedroom in Georgia while she got the skillet sizzling with country-cured ham in the kitchen. My refrigerator occasionally wakes this hour to clear its throat and mumble on over the sounds in my ears. And some nights I get out of bed to go stand under the generosity of stars here. I've decided that must be the collective noun for all the stars in one's gaze, as it also must be for any number of scars. The way we refer to a flock of starlings as a murmuration. I stand there and use my hand to shade my eyes from the streetlights to better see the stars. Our new light competes with the old, the way the clamor of our fleets in this age after sales is said to interfere with the songs of whales. Here, I sometimes see the aurora borealis, silent, which seems impossible, like the end of the world, for what we know of light in the sky, lightning, and its often not far off companion, thunder, seem to say something will always follow. Some say the northern lights sizzle, an impossibility, a synesthetic weaving of the senses, exalting this light, or a lark, like the bird which we call an exaltation when in numbers great or small, more than a handful, the way a friend used to count lovers when we were younger, told me he was on to the second hand. Love, while a lark, still handled carefully in those days. I should drive out of town to view these lights against the sky, black as a raven. They often fly in pairs or groups, a conspiracy, a storytelling, an unkindness of ravens. I will read a poem from Blood Ties and Brown Liquor. This poem mentions Nana again, my grandma. Sort of about some stories she told me growing up in Milledgeville. It's titled Learning to Walk. Summer evenings, swinging on Nana's porch, watermelon juice dripped, my feet dangled limp when I was young, toes touched in the crib behind bars. I learned to walk in braces, hobbled like a dray animal or slave. Crossbar connected my corrected feet in the swing. This summer on Nana's porch, my feet don't hang or dangle. My toes touch the floor, rock me to and fro as she talks of men she knew as she grew up in this house. Men caught hell back then. Some knew they had to leave, got wind of what was coming, left town for Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, New York. More people to get misplaced in, like a word in a story. And if you visited there, bumped into them on the street, they'd look at you like you a lie. Others were caught, sent to the chain gang. She talked of their short, quick steps and how years later, imagined chains kept them to baby steps. This next poem kind of touches on the chain gang again, and it's kind of a Milledgeville story. It's also written in a Japanese form called a haibun. It's sort of invented and popularized by the 17th century Japanese poet Basho. This is sort of my Southern fried version of one, I suppose. Milledgeville haibun. Beat, beat, beats beat here. The sound of the train on the Georgia road, the measured claps of the wheels at the gaps of the joints of the rails, is the beat of the hammer on iron and anvil at the smithy, Saul's shop, shaping shoes for mules and horses. And the sizzle of red metal and water is the train's whistle, and all echoes resound and diffuse, and the last word returns like watermelons here with summer heat. Beat with a hammer, beat when he, a boy, broke into the garden at the county jail at night when the beat men were asleep because theirs were the sweetest. So bust one open, the dull thud just before the crack, and eat the heart, and move on to the next. And he moved on to women, and settled eventually on one, and finally busted her with finality, thud before crack. And he measured time, raising the sweetest watermelons for a time. And time served, he returned, a man, and he lay on the tracks of the Georgia road, cradled by the rails. Heart stopped. Old railroad, abandoned. Between cross ties, trees grow. A feral pig roots below branches. So, in order to write the history of my hometown, I ended up inventing a character named Silas Wright to use as a lens to explore that place and its past. And this is a poem about Silas learning to write his name, which is important culturally. Part of the history of African Americans in America is that we were prohibited from writing during slavery. So it sort of works on a couple of different levels. Silas Wright at age 7, 1914. Silas Wright follows a fish's wriggle in the shallows between reeds. He scribes the line in his tablet, as much pride in that line as a man in his son. He almost giggles. Still he goes on. The next letters come easy. With this, he'll have more than a mark to bind. Rambling across the page, again and again, in messy rows, on it flows until he goes a little off the page's edge. He smiles. He's surprised to hear when his mouth opens. That's mine. And I couldn't invent a character, little boy without a family, so I gave him a family. This poem's for his older brother, Benjamin. Elegy for an Older Brother, 1922. Benny's handsome, red-brown like rust on a hoe. Empty-headed cows loll in the pasture, ignoring the mule's bray. Light shines as easily through a cicada's husk clinging to a tree as through a bottle of liniment or a glass of tea on the dinner table. The hems of his overalls fray and tickle Benny's skin as he plows. Empty promises from a brother, emptied simply without volition, friable as leaves underfoot on a fall day, translucent as a cicada's husk clinging to a tree. Benny went to war across the water, over the sea, left himself here on this side on the quay. Benny's thin and red-brown like rust on a hoe. Empty-handed, back from France, he speaks of Paris often, though he's been home 3 years come late May. The day is empty, like a cicada's husk clinging to a tree. Empty, like the sound after the mule's kick when Benny falls, free of this place, then the hum of a bee and cry of a jay. Benny's skin, red-brown like rust on a hoe, is empty as a cicada's husk clinging to a tree. Now for something different. So, about 13 years ago, 14 years ago, I moved to Bemidji, Minnesota, a little town, not Georgia, very different, cold, very white. There's a lot of snow, gets a lot of snow. And there aren't a lot of black people. So I wrote some poems. Seems to be what I do. Penumbra. Over the clerk's shoulder, out the window, framing little old Bemidji, Minnesota, 9 guys, all knees, legs, and ease, glide by on bicycles, occupying the frame 2 at a time, pedaling along the sidewalk on Paul Bunyan Drive. Each of them black, and with me we make up almost 1/16, like a measure in carpentry or miscegenation of the county's black population. Trying to balance my equation, my question looking for an answer. Family reunion? My long-lost cousins? In this folktale, I flash back to my walk yesterday along the old Indian trail, brown with leaf litter now that the snow has gone, by the lake, now brown and fluid. 9 coots swim along the lake shore, paddling, gliding with grace, harmony of the firmament. Dignified black birds with white bills, a constellation or a mobile over a baby's crib and the baby's reaching. Reminds me of ducks falling in line at the shooting gallery at the carnival, like that guy who shot his specimens with a gun. toppling with a ding, like the game show right answer. Who is John James Audubon? And Eureka, I am displacement. When the guy in line behind me asks his girlfriend that the whole basketball team have to ride their bikes today. Here in the far north of the Midwest, this is my shadow box life, framed by the window. So it was kind of a poem of early alienation in Bemidji. But you live in a place long enough, you get to know it becomes home. And I was told by Arnold Rampersad that I should write a poem called Bemidji Blues when I met him. And I said, hey, I'm from Bemidji, I'm a poet. And he's like, you have to write Bemidji Blues. So I ended up writing a poem because Arnold Rampersad, the editor of the Collected Links and Hughes, told me to. If the guy who edits Links and Hughes tells you to do something, you do it if you're a poet. Bemidji Blues. Shadows bluing the snow, the pines and mine bear the cast of a kestrel's blue-gray crown. I note as I find my way about this town. Blues here, more likely the Nordic eyes kind than the blue-black of some black folk back home. Here, so many lakes reflect the sky's blue dome. Some summer days skim milk blue, tints wind-blown white caps. Blues, an adjective, verb, and noun. And the color of the world when I pine because she's gone, leaving too much wine and time. Blue shadows on the snow, mine and the pines. For the tall man, his blue ox, and now me, home is Bemidji. Though the blues here around, more the cast of a kestrel's blue-gray crown than the blue-black of my cousins back home. I think I will turn it back over to you, Sue. Thank you. Support AQR.
Okay, so